Welcome along to this lecture today on emotional intelligence. What we will be doing is we'll be actually putting a lens around the performance psychology arena. What we'll also be doing is viewing it through the sport and exercise psychology arena as well, and then maybe trying to, or at least maintaining some sort of how do we actually create more emotionally intelligent methods within our life, within the systems that we have within our lives. So it's going to be a lecture that has an element of interactivity, in as much as that you will be asked questions, you will be given tasks, and you'll have to, put your mind to use within it and not solely just listen and watch the slides that are attached to it as well. It's an area that has grown exponentially. It's something that maybe 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10 years ago, people probably started to hear used in common everyday conversations. It's something where there's been a multitude of different journals and articles written, and we look at one of the biggest kind of systematic reviews that was completed in 2015, and we'll actually tie it in with an evidence-based practice, looking for some empiricism behind does emotional intelligence lead to greater relationships, does it lead to better understanding of people. So there's a whole host of things that actually are included within it, and then things obviously need to kind of be used for better relationships with athletes, better relationships with coaches, and then, as I keep saying and referring back to, will they create better relationships as people then again going forward? So what is EI, emotional intelligence? That's a question that I'm often asked, and what's the best way to actually illustrate your understanding? A lot of the time, because of the sports background with these type of courses, you're looking for one that guides towards emotional intelligence in sports, and we'll look at a definition then in relation to that now. So look, it's talking about emotions permeate successful sport performance and physical activity behaviour. So actually, the emotions behind what we do will lead to our success within a sport, whether we're feeling positive or negative towards it, but the emotions that can be there and then that are led to within sports-based practices. But actually, interesting enough, with the second couple of pieces of literature that's on the board there, physical activity behaviour is included in that as well. Emotional intelligence relates to emotions, physiological stress responses, successful psychological skill usage, and more successful athletic performance. And as I said, that's leaning back on the systematic review that was performed in 2015. And what I do like about that is they don't try to include everything. They don't try to go for a silver bullet, and they don't try to go for a panacea, almost getting something like a one size fits all with emotional intelligence. And I think that's the key when we're looking at all sort of research, is that, what I would have viewed as an undergraduate is probably obsolete now. Almost stuff that I was doing in a postgraduate is probably obsolete now. And education is continual evolving. The methods and the kind of constructions around research and the objectivity around it, the validity and reliability, have all become much more effective. So if we break down what's performance, well, it's your potential, what you can do, and what's the interference to it. Your performance then might be the actions that you accumulate over a game or a fight or a contest, whatever that is. Your potential is maybe hitting your ability to 100%. It's very hard to kind of see this and view it as a very definitive thing, and it's probably been much maligned because how can we actually fully say that we've reached our complete potential then again? The interference then, that can come from within us. It can be things like, how we're perceiving things, our stress on the pitch, our stress in an exercise arena, our stress in a performance arena, and continually talking to people from the business world now that I've ventured into and speaking to them around how, being a manager of a team, being a manager of 14, 15 people, well, every day actually what you're doing there's an element of performance in it as well. So you can have this internalized pressures or stresses that will actually interfere with your performance. You also have them external factors, like people who you may or may not get on with. That might be supervisors, fellow employees or colleagues. It could be in either side of that then that it's guys as well. So this is a question that I'd often, sit down with athletes, particularly with coaches. I do a lot of work with coaches coaching clinics, working with 3 or 4 coaches at a time, and maybe using their insight, knowledge, and interests to help them come up with the answers, as opposed to like a kind of just a very formal, structured, prescribed method of learning. The first one is the tactical element of games. There's some sports where you may be able to view them and think, tactically, there's a high demand in this game. So the team strategies, formation, implementation of style of play, including set pieces. And I think that can go across many, many different ventures. The next one is the technical one. So very rare, even in a business sense, that you're not gonna be in a position where you don't possess some technical or profess some technical abilities. And that might be individually and then collectively. If we're working in a team, we always say TUI, don't we? We say team, the unit you're working in, defence, midfield, attacking, let's say. So there's them elements to it as well. The next one is that physiological element. And the physiological element, when we look at it from a lifestyle perspective, we'd have to break that down, because we could say physiologically what's actually leading to stress within in the system. Physiologically, what's leading to performance decreases. Strength and conditioning coaches would mention how, leaks or leakage in your performance. If you're a sprinter, let's say, for example, what are the things that are decreasing your actual technique? What's the things that are decreasing energy from the system that maybe doesn't have to? So physical attributes will arm the athlete with the necessary levels of fitness to meet the demands of the game. The other side of that is the physiological element is that, you keep putting petrol into a diesel car, that car is going to break down. So the physiological elements actually not only includes our levels of fitness and our capability to meet the demands of the game. And that's something that's, going back, maybe 5, 6, 7 years, that I'd always professed to. Athletes come, I want to get fit. Like, well, classify what fit is. Tell me what fitness is to you. What type of fitness are we looking at? Are we going down the sport-related components of fitness? Are we going down just the kind of neutral / original elements of the components of fitness? Are you going into your body composition or flexibility? There's certain sports where you would say, how proficient or high are they on the board? We're talking about BMI being part of it. And no disrespect if you think of a sport like darts, etc. For many, many years, a lot of people, systematic review done in 2011 or 2012, from University of Lancaster, they speak about how there was something like 71% of the athletes on the world tour of darts who were overweight. So physiologically, what do you need per sport? So it's not the same for every sport. The next one then obviously is the one that, I will always look at. It's the mental side of it. It's the psychological side of it. What is the psychology of the performance jigsaw? How big of a role does it play? The mental skills that contribute to it. What are you viewing before a game? What are you visualizing? What are you mentally rehearsing? Have you got some self-talk strategies in place? Have you something that you've done to try and help during games? And I don't know if we have that all the time. And then obviously the question that I'd always say to coaches is like, what percentage would you assign per section? What percentage would you assign per section there? Are you telling me that it's just 25, 25, 25 and 25 that makes up your whole performance? What I love with this is, I don't know if I've ever sat in a room with any more than maybe 4 or 5 coaches where they've all agreed on the elements of this. And of course, with us talking about emotional intelligence, we're leading back to tactical, technical, and physiological. So let me give you an example. A coach who maybe isn't aware or has knowledge around emotional intelligence, they'd probably tactically, when they're delivering information tactically, maybe they won't be delivering in a method or be open to an approach of understanding that, or like players take in knowledge in different ways. So the yell and tell days maybe are over. But again, you'd ask the question is, it's probably still riddled across elite sport, but emotional intelligence is trying to educate us that we need to move away from that zone, that system, or whatever it might be as well. So that part of it is going to be a big element going forward. Same with the technical stuff, the technical stuff is more difficult once you're in that position. So the technical stuff, you have to be able to, if you want to be proficient in that, what way is your coach helping you to do that? Is your coach delivering information in an emotionally intelligent way? Is your supervisor, your boss, your principal, whoever it may be, are they delivering information in that emotionally intelligent constructs? And then I'd say, obviously, psychologically, the way we feel that we're being treated is a big part of it. The way we speak around these things is a big part of it. And, it's taken me a long, long time to understand that. And I don't like being that person or coach who would cast aspersions on people who coach in a certain way, who have certain demeanors, or, the whole, as I say, yell and tell. I remember doing a coaching course with one of the national governing bodies here in Ireland, and they were saying 75% of your coaching is that you have loud, and it wasn't anything to do with voice projections per se. It was to do with the whole idea that you have to have very high levels of voice projection, i.e. the yell and tell stuff. Now, look, there's probably an element where you need to have controlled the sessions that you can raise or lower your voice to really accentuate your points that you're trying to make. But for me, I always revisit the T and T, the P and P. Always come to the T and T and the P and P, and you'll never really, I don't think, in the 25 years I've been involved in sports, maybe at a high end, I don't really think that there's anything too negative if we were to say, what is your opinion on it? And again, you will notice I haven't put an answer up on the board because there is no, correct answer. I don't believe in the whole silver bullet panacea. This has to be the right answer. You have to have a certain method, because it doesn't work that way. And sport is multifaceted for reasons because of that. Again, if we go closer to looking for a more clinical academic definition of it, then athletes need to be able to identify when their emotions are influence their performance and how their emotions change over time. They need to also be able to assess the emotional states that other people are feeling, as well as picking up on their body language, verbal and non-verbal gestures. And that's something we see all the time. Coaches might talk about players' body languages. Supervisors, bosses, whoever's in control, directors, CEOs, whoever it may be. They may speak of their employees or the players' body language. But how often are they examining their own body language then again? And that definitely plays a role in it. Say as I do, not do as I say. We go back to Albert Bandura, the Bob-Woodall experiment, social learning as such. When we look at them things, these are the constructs that are attached to it. These are them type of constructs that are attached. So I do believe that they're spot on. I think that actually, in order for us to be able to correct some of these leakages, as we referred to earlier, and able to correct some of these errors or faults within our game, I truly believe, and the research, again, going back to plenty of papers written on a true empirical nature, have told us that this ability to be able to regulate our emotions is highly, highly important. And again, the concept of emotional intelligence, probably popularized by Coleman in 1995 and the mid-90s, it's flourished in many research, and largely because of its potential to influence human performance. And the key one for me there is relationships and then well-being. Our well-being is something that we probably think has got to do with going for a walk every day and probably eating a little bit more healthy, but actually the physiological and the psychological strain that can come from a workplace, the psychological and the physiological strain that can come from maybe a performance culture, a training environment. What happens when you take a good person and you put them into a bad place? Well, Philip G. Zimbardo's Stanford Prison Experiments, although many errors, I would say research construct-wise, it still gave us a good insight into it. And maybe when we look at what happened in Abu Ghraib with the American soldiers then who were urinating and defecating on some of the Iraqi prisoners, what role does the environment play, and how does group thinking or group thought come into that part as well? The next one is, why the need to control emotion. Really, really really important. I think that's such it's such an area within sport that people are probably not examining to the extent that they probably should. Probably the same in relation to when they do this within performance cultures and environments as well, because we do need to control and regulate our emotion. And this is the thing. I would often say, sadly, clients that I've had have come to me and said, I need to be able to deal with the problems that I'm having when my boss is speaking to me in a certain way. And of course, we're helping to pull them out of the river where they're going down and they're drowning. But as soon as they get back up to the top end, they're getting thrown back into that by the directors, the CEOs, the coaches, the managers, and that actually leads to a really detrimental effect on the performance. There is a real unwillingness in Ireland to maybe try new things. And that's the problem with it. So this is why emotional intelligence, it probably takes somebody at the higher end of the spectrum within the rugby sphere. Ireland, obviously #1 team in the world at the moment, and that's something that then coaches across in soccer and other sports, Gaelic, football, hurling, might start implementing. So why the need to control? Is it sport specific? Well, if it's sport specific, then if we look at some of the instances of red cards in Champions League finals. So again, you look at these, all three of the people in this images, all three of them, their team lost then again after they had a red card. Probably the most famous one, World Cup finals, Zinedine Zidane, one of the greatest players in the world, loses emotional control. Materazzi seems to have made some comments maybe about his mother or his sister. He loses emotional control. He was after scoring a penalty already in the final. And the final goes to penalty kicks then after extra time. And the French end up losing to Italy. A little bit more recent then again, Johnny Heitinga, Dutch player, World Cup final. Same thing again, gets sent off. Extra time then. You can see Andre Iniesta, who's pictured, is the one who actually scores the goal that wins the World Cup for Spain then again. So why the need to control? Is a sport specific? Well, what we've seen so far is actually, we're looking at it and it seems to be gender specific. But then only recently we've seen what happened with England in the World Cup final. Now, look, I've got a lot of rugby friends now who would tell me that it was maybe conceivably a harsh red card, maybe conceivably, but still a red card. And they were actually 14-0 up when the collision happened, and it actually turned the game. So Lydia Thompson, obviously, given, what I would say, a difficult situation. As Woodman's released the ball, their heads clashed, so obviously then the red card is there. The Scottish referee gave it to them, and she's red carded Lydia immediately for deliberate foul play as such. So it changed the tide, and then obviously New Zealand, as you are probably aware, goes on to win that final. So again, what about closer to home? Well, we're harping on about different sports as well. If we go back to the All-Ireland final with Richie Hogan, who's got a red card in the final, you're always going to be sitting in a classroom or online maybe these days, and you've different views on it, whether the referee should or shouldn't have given a red card. But I guess the kind of tale within the tale here is that you maybe shouldn't be putting yourself into a situation to do so with it as well. So we've got really good information on emotional intelligence and performance psychology. The problem is we also have a host of maybe archaic ideas around sport, and how you'll hear coaches maybe promote the idea of players playing on the edge. And okay, we look at the relationship between emotional arousal and peak performance. If we think of the inverted U hypothesis, if we think of the Kastorf theory, if we were to examine them, we know that there is a level of arousal needed for peak performance, but we also know that the closer you get to that edge of peak performance with your arousal level, if it's high, yeah, okay, you might compete and be highly ferocious, playing and not contravening any rules. But essentially what you will do is you'll be playing at the edge, which may or may not result in yellow or red cards. So let's have a look at this. Emotional intelligence and coaching are inseparable. So Sir John Whitmore, is, obviously passed away at this stage, but it's a quote that's always stood to me. if you're a coach, you need to have this emotional intelligence. Really good story that Sir John actually speaks of in one of the books that I've read recently is around how he's coaching a young female set of athletes, and one of the athletes comes and asks for time to speaks with them, etc. And actually, it's just at the end of the tale, it turns out that the player is really interested in the sport, has a love for the sport, continuously thinks about the sport, and maybe isn't shown the appetite that the coaches would have hoped for due to a personal circumstance at home where the parents are fighting all the time and are close to a separation. So again, you might think you haven't got time as a coach to deal with these things, and you will have people saying to you, don't go near them, you're not qualified. And yeah, okay, I accept that. There's certain things that we're not, but one thing we are qualified, or we should be qualified in, is the ability for us to be able to, in my opinion, the ability for us to be able to care for our athletes, care for other human beings, show empathy, illustrate empathy, show emotional intelligence, and not in any way, I've done this lecture maybe 5-6 years ago, and somebody had said to me, about 3 years ago, I tell a lie, and somebody actually said to me, is this kind of just pandering to athletes, and is it offering them a way out as excuses? No, is my answer, and no is my answer now. If you flash forward to 3 years later, what it is it's a more highly profitable stance on how we coach and the way we use our emotional intelligence to help athletes that are in our sphere then again. So 90% of elite performers possess high levels of emotional intelligence. They'd have to, if you think about it, there'd have to be some methods that they can or they cannot do in that situation, if that makes sense. So that is a big one. What way you decipher that is a little bit different. What way you decipher that is a little bit different, and that's up to yourself also. But it's also something that I think illustrates that if you want to be at the top level, yeah, all right, okay, James, it's nearly 20 years old, this piece of research, and that's fine, but it's still a good illustration of where we're at with elite athletes and where we need to be bringing them then again. So if we were to look at it, what does it affect and what kind of things can it help with? The main one that it helps with straight off is the motivation and mental toughness. It can actually encourage you to be more mentally tough when in essence, if we go back to that kind of, I would say, coach with a very old school philosophy on what way we should be coaching or how we should be coaching. Again, I would say this is a good illustration that we can be mentally tough, yes, but we can also illustrate good emotional intelligence. For me, they're not mutually exclusive. They do not have to be at one end of the spectrum. You can do both, and you should maybe strive to do both as well. Self-confidence then, high levels of self-confidence. It can increase your self-confidence knowing that you're doing the right thing and you're coaching in the right way and helping people around the elements or constructs that they wish to kind of apply to their own life then again. Arousal and activation. I've just spoke a little bit about the high levels of arousal that's needed, or the levels of arousal that's needed in order to be able to perform and need these elements if you were to go forward as a coach at a high level. Concentration and attentional control then. Why is that going to be important? Well, listen, you're going to be in a position, I would imagine a lot of the time, where you're dealing with athletes. If you're in high end of sport, concentration and attention is going to be very, 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 very important as well. So how do you go about doing that? Well, for me, that's vitally important too. It is important, for you as a coach to do so. And just to be able to illustrate that as a coach, I guess that's me. That would be my best way of putting it. For you to illustrate that as a coach, I would think is the best method, going forward for yourself. Then again, so that's the way I'd see it. potentially going forward as a person yourself then as well. Okay. Um, the next one The next one for me, there is the regulation of stress. Wow. What a key feature to the application of high performance. What a key feature to the application of having a fairly high performance lifestyle. For me, I look at it and I think, I think this is the key for me. If you can regulate the elements of stress that's in our life, can we regulate them to make sure that they're not following us around, that they're not waking us up at night or keeping us awake late at night when we're hoping that to get sleep, and then ensure that we get sleep, should I say, as well. So that's a big part of it. Coping with adversity. Again, we think about resilience, and everybody, might get a bit of stick from some of my students, but I would always say the most fascinating thing I will always say to my students around resilience, that the really, really, really big and prominent things is you can't really illustrate resilience until you've had a setback. You can't really illustrate it. So what happens here is actually it shows an illustration that we have to have some sort of ability to illustrate how we cope with adversity or what way we cope with adversity. And that is a key element going forward if you're wishing to be a coach at the top end of sport. So a growing body of evidence indicates that these psychological skills are based on individual capacity to recognise, manage and regulate emotions. So are we ever really able to reach our full potential if we don't have some, and I don't say all, but I say some level to recognise, to manage and to regulate emotion? Then again, that is a really key cornerstone of where we're going with it. If we start off with these stages of learning, and we had different stages, or we different types of learning, all these different kind of components and all the rest of it, and excuse me, when I studied human memory, initially it was from a very, very different scope. I was looking at it from a biological element, and I'm looking at consolidation of memory from frontal lobe to amygdala, to hippocampus, the relationships between the fornix, etc. All of these different things that are there with the relationship. And then you come to this kind of cognitive psychology element, is that at the start we're unconsciously incompetent. So we don't know we aren't good at skills. We're not even thinking, and the example that most people would give is about driving. We've heard this multiple times, we didn't even acknowledge it. Then we become consciously incompetent. So we realise, Genie Mac, I actually thought driving a car is the easiest thing in the world, but when I clutch in and I take then we become consciously competent. So we work hard, we get good at it. We have to, the example I use to people is, the pointer, the person who's typing and they're, pointed down A and then F and then. So that's the kind of consciously competent, but you're working hard to get good at it. Then you become unconsciously competent, so we don't need to focus on it. So again, I can start to stare at the screen while I'm talking here, and I could type at the same time, and that's that unconsciously competent. But then we become consciously unconsciously competent when we're aware that we don't need to focus. So again, me being able to say to you as well, do you know what, guys? I listen to this lecture, I could be typing away, looking at the screen, and not really facing the keyboard. So that gives, again, what does it give us? It gives us a good insight, good information based around these stages of learning, what we would call them then again. So they can be very, 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 very beneficial to us in many ways, and that's what we try to achieve. So I did mention that, my early underpinnings would have been around sports science. So even before, let's say I was unconsciously incompetent per se, before I even knew around psychology or anything like that, I wouldn't have understood the localization. I wouldn't have had any sort of the early underpinnings of Franz, Joseph Gall's phrenology, the localization and features of that. I wouldn't have had a knowledge on it. So for me, that's where I would have had to take a knowledge, a learning and an understanding of what it is. So for me then, the prefrontal cortex, this front part, this kind of bluey part as the skull spins on your screen there. It's like a control center. It's helping us to guide our actions, and therefore this area is also involved during emotion regulation. The thing with this is that it's also involved with lots of other things like reasoning. So again, if you're highly emotional, oxygen not being delivered there, etc., maybe we'll make decisions that aren't so based around reason, based around then types of concepts then again. So after that, what we see is a part that's in regulation of our emotions called the amygdala. And the amygdala you'll probably have heard of. If you haven't, then it'll be the 4Fs, the fight, flight, fawn or freeze. Now the fawn element can also be referred to as befriend. It's a more modern day construct where violence is probably frowned upon more so than ever. So them constructs of us acting out with frustration have probably changed dramatically. Probably changed dramatically over or down through the years. Then again, what we do have and what we will view then is this element that it's a small almond-shaped region deep in the brain, and it helps regulate emotion and encode memories, especially when it comes to more emotional remembrances. So we learn all these things during the day. Okay, we learn them, but how do we retain them? Well, what we do is we actually have a part deep within the amygdala then again that will help us consolidate. So from the frontal lobe all the way back down to all the way back down. And that's again, if we were to examine it, it's a key feature of it for me. A really key feature going forward then again, that we can do that and understand how to do that as well. So it is, again, is it important? Yeah, it is important for me. It is important, and I think going forward, it's quite important if you were to place it in a coaching spectrum. Okay, your amygdala are essential to, so obviously left and right then again, to your ability to feel certain emotions and perceive them in order. So the frontal lobe, what can I do? I said reasoning, planning, construction. It allows, there's a serious amount of things that it can help here. It's the higher level of thinking. It's that prefrontal cortex. It's the one that differentiates us from all other animals on the planet. It's the one that allows the power of introspection to ask them deeper questions that maybe some of our other species or friends across the species spectrum that are on the planet don't really do. But with us, we get the chance to prod at that frontal part of the brain as well. So social and emotional reactions, maintaining concentration and alertness, decision making, as you can imagine, from looking at this, is key to any sort of high performance. Any sort of high performance goal setting, etc., or high performance arenas where you're making big decisions at big times during games, and how does that actually implement on you going forward? It's vitally important. I think we all probably are aware of it. It's vitally important if you're looking to be able to do that. Then again, so next part is your brain as a reward detector. It searches, scans the environment, decides what to do, and then executes. The football and life are the same in the sense that we interact with environment, communicate, we decide appropriate action, and then the decision. So when we play football, we're using the unconscious part of our brain. The next section is a section that's really close to my heart because it's work that I do with a lot of people a lot of the time, and it's all based around self-care and delivering emotional intelligence. So quite often the lectures that I've been involved in or around have been all versed towards this kind of concept of emotional intelligence and how we can be better managers or how we can be better CEOs or directors of companies. But what I love about this element of self-care and delivering it is actually it comes all the way back to, well, how do we make sure that if we're delivering it to others, that we can now deliver it to ourselves? How do we deliver self-care to ourselves? How do we maintain the real emphasis the really important emphasis of self-care to ourselves. And listen, there's plenty of people out there who are making lots of money, lots and lots and lots of money um, around the concept of self-care for coaching. It's becoming bigger all the time, but it's something that maybe you don't need to spend money on or be part of certain groups that would classify themselves as elite coaches, just in order to kind of pull you and get you into that sphere or that zone of it then again. So that's why you really need to be I would say, super or hyper aware of these things then again. That for me, key element here as well. Okay, so moving it on then. Discovering your personal productivity rhythm has a powerful effect on how you can maximize your daily workload and improve your overall time management. Your productivity rhythm will measure how, when, and where you are most productive. You can use these cycles to your advantage. For me, again, you go back maybe 2, 3, 4 years ago, I'm offering advice to people and I'm saying, no, you should be in bed by this time and you should be asleep by this time and there's no way you should be doing work at that time and so on and so forth. And actually what I realised after a period of time is that we actually have really unique personal rhythm productivity hours. There's certain times where my wife actually is really productive. And for love nor money, I actually do not know how she does it or how she could work within that time zone. But the flip side of that then is it's the same when she looks at me or thinks the same to me. So we both have these productive hours, these highly productive hours, but again, we don't always align to each other, if that makes sense then again. So they're not at the same time, essentially. Determining your peak in level of energy and focus will allow you to make better choices throughout your busy workday, as well as keep, in order to effectively find productivity rhythm, it's important to take time to invest in yourself with your currents. I say it all the time, frowned upon, viewed in different ways, different opinions, whatever you may look at it, whatever might be, whatever way people might view it. But for me, this is the important one. This is the really important one. When are you checking in with yourself? When are you actually saying, listen, it's been a couple of weeks now, and when I realise it, I look at my diary and I'm thinking, okay, I've actually been, working constantly now for maybe the last 2 weeks, probably 2, 3 weeks. I've been constantly working. And I haven't had a break. Even on Sundays, I've sat down in the morning, I've took the laptop out. Is that going to be good for me? Is it healthy for me? Should I be spending that time with my family, maybe doing other things? It's a really, really, really useful method, a very useful method that could be used going forward that would help as well. So, you've got to check in with yourself, and this helps. I can only admit that I've got different athletes who journaling works amazing for. They love it, and maybe takes a bit of time to get used to. Okay, again, we can accept that. But I do have athletes who it hasn't worked for, and that's a position where you don't, nor should you ever get caught with the no, it has to work. I have to find a way of getting around it. Blah 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 blah. And it just doesn't. It really just doesn't. If journaling doesn't work for them, then you've got to find something that does. And how do you find something that does? Well, you allow them to check different methods of journaling. An athlete of mine, couldn't do it. Writing down didn't help. If anything, it made them more anxious. Okay, so they just deliver little audio notes to themselves each evening. What do I take from today? With younger athletes who maybe are looking into it, I'd always say take 3 elements of learning from the day, but also before you do anything else, take 3 elements that you've done really well during the day. What are the things that you've done really, really well? Make sure that you know what you've done really well. And when you've done that, then you're well within your rights in order for you to be able to kind of suggest why it is you're doing what you're doing, if that makes sense. So you audio notes, perfect. Writing it down, perfect. Typing it down, perfect. Doing it on notes on your phone, perfect. Check in daily. How was today? What did I take from it? Weekly. What did I get? check in. Monthly, what did I get? Check in. Sorry, just a little caveat on that, and I apologise because I'm going back and forth. But anyway, the point I'd make here is the monthly one. The monthly one is the one I always make sure that I'm trying to do with a friend of mine, a mentor of mine, so they can provide some feedback on it. Sometimes we can't view things outside of the chasm that we're living in. It's quite simple, actually. You know, I have a very good friend of mine who would often, I'm trying to think, they would, would often say, listen, most of it is in relation to energy in, energy out. How do we do that? What way do we do it? Energy we take in is by the food that we ingest or the sleep that we get. Again, I'll give you this one and you can use it whatever way you wish, but the energy in with our sleep, is basically like using your laptop charger on your phone. All of a sudden your phone is charged in quicker time to a greater standard and probably lasts for much longer. Now you go and you get one that you pay maybe €1 for or €2 for, and you try to charge it. You'll see all the time, that's a little bit like your food. It will take a lot longer for you to get the energy from certain types of food. So that tells us that when we're thinking of the energy we're taking in versus the energy that's going out then, I think it's a very, very good illustration that we need to make sure we're getting good sleep and that we're checking our energy levels daily. Taking regular breaks. It's something that some people are extremely good at. And then I've met athletes, I've met people who are extremely bad at it. And again, it's not in a negative way. It's not me having a go saying that they're bad at it. It's actually just not taking breaks because they feel like their work is their life, and maybe that, you know, again, that's terrific. That they've got such a passion for it. But also just be wary that if our work is our life, you're probably going to end up giving your life for it, because if you're that engrossed in it and you can't take breaks, it probably will lead to detrimental effects on your health. It may lead to some sort of coronary heart disease. It may in fact just lead to some sort of other elements of disease, diabetes, etc. So it's really, really important for you to be able to keep note of these things and be aware of the importance that they play for you as well. Each day you have the work that is scheduled, and then you might have training session that's scheduled. Then you have to go to gym that's scheduled. It's equally as important to schedule breaks for yourself. Hands up, 2 hands in the air. Really, really being honest here. Wasn't good at it. Wasn't good with it. Probably gonna have an adverse effect on my health. Okay, again, no problem. And then I take the next step and I say, what can I do? Well, I've actually just started to take maybe 15-minute breaks. I try to go to a quiet space if I can. I go to a dark space, and I just try to relax. I try to turn everything off. Some days I use music to help me do that, relax. Sometimes I use other elements of stuff. So it's all about finding your niche and finding what works for you. And if you do, it's much more. It can be much more beneficial to you then again. Really will play a bigger role for you then as well. So the multitasking myth. So, you know, the joke when I was growing up certainly was that males couldn't multitask and females were very good at it. So that was something that I would have always looked at and thought, well, I need to get better at multitasking. I'm not really only doing one thing at a time here. I'm not very good whatsoever. And then as it's gone on, I've realised and read the information around the concepts of multitasking. And research out of Harvard Institute, and also some coming from University of Illinois, has kind of led us more towards really good information towards these constructs or these constructs, if that makes sense. And these constructs are actually all around a common misconception of effective time management is the skill of multitasking. Despite how may this seem like a sufficient way to conquer that to-do list, it's actually harmful to your productivity rhythm and leads to a significant loss of value time. Multitasking and good time management oppose one another. Performing multiple activities at once will cause you to stress more, perform poorly, and increase your chances of burnout. Our brains are not designed to handle multiple assignments at once, such as answering emails while conversing in an important business call. And the one that I get on that, or the one that I see most often on that, is the one where I'm trying to send a message and somebody's talking to me at the same time, and I'm not gonna lie about this. I can become really frustrated. Can get a little bit agitated. Sorry, could you just give me a minute while I send this? And again, that side of it, I'm not too versed with, or how to do it, if that makes sense. So that's the way I see it. But one major advantage to devote from all of your energy into one task at a time, when you dedicate your time and focus on one task at a time, you'll generate a better outcome for that task. Organize your time so that each task will receive your full energy rather than sharing this energy on various projects. Instead of the multitasking myth, let's try time batching, as I suggested then. It's a really productive system. It's a more modern system. People would often say, oh, is it not the same as multitasking? I would definitely say that it's not the same as multitasking. Most certainly isn't the same as multitasking in any way. So again, you'd have to look at it and think. But it's definitely that's definitely an element that I would certainly suggest is important then again going forward. So look, it involves similar tasks together and organising dedicated time periods. So you're scheduling time to do these things, and it might be 2 tasks, but it might be 2 tasks over 2 hours. So I'll only do the one thing. So it might be sending emails and also doing a little bit of research. But if I've got 2 hours during the day, I'll time batch and put one for 1 hour and one for the next, but it's still in the same batch as such. So time batching will provide concentration without breaking your workflow, and it'll eliminate multitasking. The practice of time batching is advantageous for everyone, whether you have difficulty on focusing on a task, have many disturbances in your workplace, or become easily distracted, or are just simply looking to have a productive day. It's a simple process to implement. To begin with, start by establishing your to-do list. With the list, determine which of the tasks relate to one another and batch them together on your schedule. Think about which tasks will be realistic to do right time and another. I often find that if I'm just at my laptop, I'm not in a great position to do research. I need me couple of screens maybe to be able to do something like that. So time batching when I'm doing research is really important for me. So I know if I don't have access to multiple screens, let's say, that doing research within that period of time is probably not a good idea for me. The work-life balance conundrum that everybody the world over tries to understand and letting it know, I will definitely be able to see that and definitely push forward on that and always strive to get better at it, because it's something that, to be honest with you, we're all trying to get one up in life and become better, and the majority of the time that means we're dedicating more time. But actually, work-life balance is probably going to result with people who are in higher roles, CEOs, etc. So when you reach the pinnacle, that you're in a position that your body, your mind, your physiological aspects are in a position to enjoy it. So the most productive individuals are those who are well balanced. Work-life balance includes prioritizing demands in one's personal life at home as well as demands in the workplace. This does not mean an equal balance of time between work and home, but rather prioritizing what is important during that time. Work time should be dedicated to tasks that are essential for your career, whereas home time should be dedicated to family time or personal time. Be respectful of your time. Poor work-life balance will often result in working longer hours, increased responsibilities, and a greater chance of experiencing burnout. Prioritize your time. Time management is more than just managing our time. It's about managing ourselves in relation to time. So picking things that we know is going to work. Now, a great little rule that I got from a good friend of mine maybe 2 or 3 years ago was the kind of Pareto rule. And that's basically saying the 80-20. So it's stating that 80% of your results will come from 20% of your actions. For most people, the reality comes down to analysing what you're spending your time on. The key to highly efficient individuals is placing focus on efforts that will produce the greatest results. Across the board, you will find that the 80-20 principle may be applied to almost every situation. Essentially, this principle will alter the way that you set your goals as well as prioritize your tasks to help you manage your time. The urgent/important matrix. Urgent and important but not urgent, urgent but not important, and then not urgent and not important. So breaking it down into this matrix of these important and urgent, these activities lead to achieving your goals and have the greatest impact. Urgent, these activities demand immediate attention but are often associated with someone else's goals rather than your own. Urgent and important activities in this area is related to dealing with critical issues as they arise and meeting significant commitments. Perform these duties now. And that would be maybe a CEO, referred to as the Eisenhower principle as well, just to mention. And that might be a CEO, a principal, a director of football maybe. So them roles are quite important then again. So what we do is we scan, and what we scan is important but not urgent. These success-oriented tasks are critical to achieving goals, but plan to do these tasks next. Urgent but not important, these chores do not move you forward towards your own goals. Manage by delaying them, cutting them short and rejecting requests from others. Postpone these chores. And not urgent and not important, these trivial interruptions are just a distraction and should be avoided if possible. However, be careful not to mislabel things like time with family and recreational activities as not important. Avoid these distractions altogether. Being assertive again, I would say you have to become comfortable with the uncomfortableness of saying no. I can't do it right now. I'm working on another project that's due at 5 p.m. today. And being a young teacher, I remember, the principal of the school, I'm looking for a contract and I want to make sure that I get a contract of indefinite duration and a mortgage and all these different things that are popping in. And I found myself just saying yes to everything. And then I realised, hang on a minute, I need to say no here. So then I was saying no, but when I was saying it was maybe leading to some sort of conflict. And you don't want conflict, you want a resolution of conflict like everybody knows. But actually, being assertive and the ability to say no is a key skill that we need to learn then as well. This is a very psychological term that we have here: chunk, block and tackle. Large projects can sometimes be overwhelming. It's difficult to plan to start them. So large projects can sometimes be so overwhelming. Time management technique is ideal for taking on these jobs. Simply break down the project into manageable chunks, block off time to work on the project, and then tackle it with a single-minded focus. Chunk, break large projects into specific tasks and complete them in less than 15 minutes. Block, rather than scheduling an entire project all at once, block out set times to complete specific chunks as early in the day as possible. This should allow you to ignore most interruptions and focus just on task. Tackle, now tackle the specific task, focusing on the task rather than the project as a whole. Ready, fire, aim. Again, research coming from the US here, and actually some of it's been pushed across to some of the UK stuff as well, is this kind of ready, fire, aim. Now, it might seem like a contradiction, but you've probably all heard of the whole, ready, aim, fire. But this is saying ready, fire, aim. Why is that? Well, actually, what it's telling us here is because most people aim for the target and they keep aiming at the target, but they never seem to fire. They get so caught up with the planning that they fail to take action. It's like the Pareto rule, 80-20, 80-20. Stop overanalyzing. Sit down, start writing. You can reassess it. You can reevaluate it. Misspelled, we'll redo all the spelling and grammar. We'll look at the syntax. Get started is the rule. So, when we're doing the fire, remember the 80-20 rule, as I just said. Aim. Make new plans based on new information. Ready, just your aim, because based on where you hit the target. Now, how do I become more emotionally intelligent? What are some of the tips, tricks, and practical activities that I can implement to become more emotionally intelligent? So how do I become more emotionally intelligent? Some tips that we can use, practical implications that will allow you take these into the business, performance, sport or exercise sphere, and use not just in terms of building relationships but maintaining relationships as well, and potentially investing in much more fruitful, purposeful relationships as well going forward. So the first one we look at is self-management, as we spoke about previously. Never leave it to tomorrow that which you can do today. It seems counterintuitive when we spoke about kind of, task batching and the myth of multitasking and prioritizing of time and time management. But actually, I think it's just a suggestion that, the procrastination of things can actually lead to more procrastination. So you can never manage others until you can manage yourself. Steve Jobs' very famous quotation at this stage, and actually it includes the ability to embrace your strengths, the ability to adapt to challenges, you nurture your relationship with others, set goals for yourself, understand your emotions, and be patient. You need to prioritize your well-being, or none of the ones above it will actually come into the forefront. So, embracing your strengths, as it says, a very Irish problem, I would suggest. Oh, I love your jeans. You look terrific. I just got them from Pennies, the whole joke of Pennies. The anecdote, we struggle with complimenting ourselves and others. When you're good at something, embrace it. Let others know that you're good at it and that you're not afraid to show it. Adapt to challenge. Obviously, the picture of our old friend Darwin there, and the key forefront to survival as a species is adaptation, the ability to adapt to situations. So it is something that maybe in order to survive, the key is adaptation. Nurture your relationships, put time into them, learn to forgive, be compassionate, accept others, and create rituals. Balance social and alone time. Set goals for you, not them. So, you have to start thinking what it is you want, for long periods of time. And I tend to notice this with younger clients. It's what their parents want, it's what they think they want. They examine what that actually is, and then they realize that's actually not what I want. So you're creating goals. Goals create focus and attention. They'll also challenge you to grow. They'll drive you to action, and goals offer inspiration as well. So understand your emotions. Everyday people will go through a wide range of emotions, and it's really important for your self management that you acknowledge these feelings. My advice, I would always say, is to recognize what they are. So recognize them. All of them need to breathe. So accept them then and move on as well. What is important is seldom urgent, and what is urgent is seldom important. So again, just another quote there. We spoke about the Matrix earlier, didn't we, with the Eisenhower effect as such. So for me, that part of it's a vital aspect. So have a little patience. We can be our own worst enemy and demand unrealistic goals or expectations of ourselves. It's vitally important to be time conscious, but that is also acknowledging that we need to allow for results in our own goals in business, sport, or life. Two is our self awareness. Having self awareness gives us the power to influence outcomes, helps us become better decision makers, and gives us more confidence. When we communicate with clarity and intention, which allows us to understand things from multiple perspectives and not just our own, it frees us from the assumptions and biases that might actually take place. Three is our social skills, and these are key to emotional intelligence. You need to work on your social skills if you want to be a highly emotional intelligent coach, person, CEO, director, etc. A successful leader must be able to build sustainable relationships with customers, employees, and maintain them in the long term. If you want to lead, you have to gain the trust of other people and behave empathetically towards them. Only then will employees recognise their leaders as such. The ability to communicate effectively with others is a core social skill. If you've strong communication skills, you'll be able to share your thoughts and ideas clearly with others. Effective communication make good leaders because they can explore projects and goals in an easy to understand way. It's like Prometheus, taking these complex ideas from the gods almost, and being able to deliver them in simplistic, understandable ways. So, internal motivation, as we spoke about previously, intrinsic motivation versus extrinsic. So, the intrinsic side of us is that love, passion, exploration, growth, autonomy, all of these beautiful things that we get from inside us. So, if we love a task, the idea is we'll become competent or creative with that. But if there's no internal motivation, it will probably decrease. Empathy, but real empathy. So, why is it put in such a kind of funny way there? Well, an empathetic practitioner coach can see the world from their employees' perspective and make decisions that consider their needs and feelings. This type of leadership is vital because it can help build trust, foster communication, and motivate employees. The metacognition and emotional intelligence link. So, metacognition, what is it? Thinking about thinking, essentially. Metacognition is the process of thinking about one's own thinking and learning. And then it's also seen as an intentional thinking about how you think and learn. So first of all, I got this from a cool little video online, and the resources the resource and link should be in the description below. So look, you assess the task, find out what it is it big, small, anywhere in between. Again, we go back to some of our AI practical implementations. We evaluate our strengths and weaknesses based on what the task is. Some things we're really good at, some things we might need to put the hand out and ask for help. Plan the approach then. Make sure you have a plan. If you don't have a roadmap, you don't know where you're going, even if you have Google Maps. Apply your strategies then. It doesn't have to be a detailed plan. Just visualize it. Think, what is it that I want to do? What does the end goal of this look like? What way do we view it, and what way does it look when we're going forward then? Assess the task is the first part, but as we move through the other stages, we're now applying them strategies. So if we go back to the Pareto principle, 20% of all this planning, all get it started, get it down on paper, get it down on your laptop, or very much so, just get it out into the open and start the process. You need to monitor your progress. Have you done much in the last 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes? Maybe it's time for a break. Maybe it's time to take a bit of time away or outside of something that you're doing. And then we always, as with anything, we need to reflect on the highly emotional coach, the highly emotional, high emotional intelligence athlete, CEO, director, whatever you call them. They need to take time to reflect. And then you'll adjust your approach, because you need to get better with it. And sometimes we start off on things and they're very rough around the edges and they're in their infancy, and then we work on them and they get better and they get better and they get better. You need to reset, as I always say. So, that can be rapidly done. It could be very obvious where you need to improve, or it can be a long time. Your metacognition can be done daily, monthly, or yearly, and that's fine. The key to it is understanding and developing reflective practice. So metacognition, it's not just in college life. It's not just about setting a task for doing an assignment. It's not just about a career that you may have in a very specific orientation, business and IT, let's say. It's lifelong learning. It's a throughout your life. What's the reflections that you can achieve? The bad news is that time flies. The good news is that you're the pilot. When we have an overview of emotional intelligence and the examination and lecture that we've done today, it starts on the left-hand side with understanding what is AI. We then setting aim to be an AI, an emotional intelligent coach, player and person. Linked into that then, we need to have some sort of measuring of your AI and your self-care, which we spoke about. Your emotional intelligence links into increased productivity and greater relationships. After that, we have areas of improvement, and then we'll set new targets as always. And this is from that systematic review in 2015. So thanks for joining us today. Remember, emotional intelligence is key, not just for athletes, coaches, parents, everybody who's out there in the coaching sphere.